Hi everyone, my name is Antony Lowe. I'm known as the Physio Detective, and this is a course preparation material which I've called the Physio Detective Way. This is for all the Bulletproof seminar series that I'm doing, and you can find this on YouTube and the slides at Slideshow. I thought I'd tell you a little bit about myself. You can find me on social media as a Physio Detective. I have a blog as well as a clinic website where you can do bookings from. I work and train from 3 different CrossFit gyms, but I spend the most of my time at Reebok CrossFit GCS. My CrossFit experience has personally been for over 2 years now, so I know what it's like to train with elite athletes, doing different types of programs, and I'm on a personal journey myself. I also have treated games level athletes, regionals level athletes, and all level of CrossFit athletes, from the very beginner into those who want to break into the regionals and CrossFit games. All the patients and sports that are out there will fit this model that I'm presenting today. So it's not just about CrossFit, it's just that I happen to love CrossFit and want to run these seminars specific for CrossFit athletes. So in this lecture I'm going to cover some definitions. These are really common words that are thrown around, so I'm going to tell you how I define these words and really get into the specific versus functional wording as well. We're going to find out what normal movement is defined as and what abnormal or dysfunctional movement is. We're going to cover some injury prevention as well as training and rehabilitation principles, but most importantly the principles of assessment and treatment, because this is where the real difference is in making large gains in people's performance as well as taking away their pain quickly. So to start with the definitions, mobility is basically the ability to move or be moved freely and easily. In CrossFit, it's basically the ability to move through the necessary range of motion for the prescribed movements to achieve optimal efficiency and the required movement standards. That's a bit of a mouthful. So what I generally say is mobility is how well can you move with what you have. Now, any of you who've been doing exercise for some time will know that your first squat of the day is not always your best squat. And it's only after you've done a few, you've warmed up the joints, you've got some of that fluid that's been in your tissues for a while moving, that's when you know you're back to normal. And that's how I define mobility. Mobility is basically how well you move with what you have. It's like greasing up the joints. It's not improving anything, it's just improving how you move. Flexibility, however, is actually the quality of bending easily without breaking. That's the dictionary definition. In CrossFit, it's basically how much can your joints move to do the movement that you need. So it's simply how far can you move. Now flexibility is a subjective quality. If you're a contortionist, you're going to need to be really flexible. If your only task is to stand there still, you don't need a lot of flexibility to do that. So in CrossFit we do many different movements. An overhead squat, as shown here by Ev, very beautiful overhead squat. She's quite flexible and quite strong. So she's able to do an overhead squat really well. Stability. Now stability is defined by some physios as the ability to maintain the desired trajectory despite kinetic, kinematic or control disturbances. It's a bit of a mouthful again. So basically I've defined it as the ability to complete the prescribed movements without excessive shearing or unwanted motion in all the joints that are involved. So in other words, how well can you control your movement and your posture? Pip here is showing that she's able to stack all her joints and her bones in a beautiful line, and she's quite stable in that position. You've got to be able to withstand different levels of load, mobility requirements, as well as the predictability of the task, as well as risk. So stability is quite an interesting subject, and we can talk for hours on it. But the bottom line is, can you control what you have in when you move and when you stay still? Dissociation is the disconnection or separation of something from something else, or the state of being disconnected. Basically, I want to know if you can move one body part without moving other body parts. So how well can you keep something still while moving something else? So for example, here Brandon Swan has got a curved back here as he does a strict pull-up, and that's not ideal. He's demonstrating this poor movement pattern for me here. I want to see you start your pull-up in a straight line and be able to pull straight up to the top without bending your back. And that would be dissociation. That's the ability to keep your spine still as you move your arms and your shoulders. Specific versus functional. Now, specific is what I believe what everybody says. Most people say functional, and that's because doing an exercise like the side-lying clams is not particularly functional when you compare it to what you need to do for a pistol, for example. So when you hear people say functional, I want you to actually think specific. If I was trying to stretch my hamstrings for deadlifts, I would actually think that this stretch here for the deadlift is more specific for what I need it to be, which is deadlifts, compared to this one here where the back is rounded, the head is rounded, the leg is in this position. It's not particularly specific for deadlifts. So the more specific you are when you do something, the more likely you are to get specific results, which is really important. Most movements do serve a function. That's why I think most movements are functional movements. So you want to choose specific movements for your goal, and you want to do specific things to achieve your goals. Now, we need to know what normal movement is if we're to know what abnormal movement is. And you have to know what Rich Froning is doing here, an overhead squat with a plate, and you have to know what it feels like. You have to know what his arms are doing, so his technique while he does it, what his leg is doing. You've got to know what normal range of motion is. So can you actually keep your arms straight above head? There's not many people that can do this well if you're a beginner. What sort of strength, flexibility and control requirements does this overhead lunge require? What's the movement standard? The movement standard in CrossFit is that the knee has to touch and the plate has to stay overhead. Can you meet that? You need to know all the movement standards for whatever movement you're doing. So the technique, how far they've got to move, what the strength, flexibility, control requirements are, what the movement standards and the rules are in CrossFit, as well as what the goal of the movement is. So the goal of this movement is to keep the plate overhead and to lunge, walk it out on the spot, whatever it is. Other movements have different goals, and knowing what they are will help you determine what is acceptable and not acceptable as normal movement. So here we've got a picture of someone, a lot of people make fun of these types of photos. It's likely that this was a bad photo, that she was in a relatively good position and they just took a picture at a bad time. But you can see that her arm is bent, she's leaning backwards, her knee may be over her foot too far, it's hard to tell. Her back knee isn't on the ground, but she may not be at the bottom yet. We can see that her picture here does not look as good as the picture of Rich Froning, just because we can see that she has deviations from normal. It may be that she's in pain and this is how she has to complete the movement. We want to consider different techniques, anatomical differences. She might have a sore shoulder or coming back from an operation, so we don't know what her problems are. So I'm not going to laugh at her position. I'm just going to point out that it doesn't look like the ideal position. But we do have to consider that she may have anatomical differences. She may be training for something different. She may just be a beginner and this is her ability, and that's fine. So if we're going to do assessment and treatment, you actually have to know what movements we're testing. You know, are we looking at a deadlift? Are we looking at the squats? Are we looking at the fact that you get pain when you do vacuuming and you may be carrying a baby around at the same time? Or you might just be doing overhead work with a barbell. Once you know what you're testing, then we can look at the problem movement and the postures that you adopt. A rounded back for back pain may be an indication that you shouldn't round your back, that the weight is too heavy for you. So some of the problem movements we look at are the activities of daily living, such as vacuuming, bending over, picking up clothes, hanging things on the line, picking up dishes. We want to look at exercises that cause poor symptoms or poor performance. So painful symptoms, stiffness, soreness, sharp pain, pins and needles, numbness, or just that plateau. I can't strict press more than 60 kilos and it's been like that for more than 6 months. That's a problem movement for me. We want to also look at stretches that cause symptoms. I'm sure there are people out there who've done some stretches and they've stopped because it's hurt them. Stretches should not hurt you. They should not make your performance worse, and they should not make your situation worse than what it currently is. We want to see specific movements of the regions involved. So if you have shoulder pain, I'm going to look at your shoulder working in this range as well as in this range, because they require different movements in those regions, and they're different tasks, different loading requirements. So we need to look at many different movements of the specific region that we're interested in. If you have hip pain, it's again different. We're going to look at squats and deadlifts and lunges. We may not look at how you do a strict press unless strict press hurts your hip. So when we do look at movement, we want to look at what their position or their posture is starting like. Do they stand well? Is the barbell nicely centered over the center of their foot? Do they have excessive leaning back or bending over? Is there anything in a suboptimal position which may help their pain or their symptoms? So we look at the whole body. We don't just look at what's sore. I usually recommend that you start from the feet up or the head down. I don't care which way you go, just don't miss anything. And I like to see a test or retest to see if it's a problem. For example, if somebody complains of standing back pain in the front rack, like we have here, then if I just brought their chest forward a little bit, flatten their back a little bit, change their pelvic angle a little bit, does that change their pain? Do they no longer have back pain if they just stood in the front rack position? It's only relevant, the posture, if it actually changes their performance or their pain. How do they move? Well, we like to see people moving well. So this is Jess Coughlin doing a deficit handstand push-up. We want to see if she has back pain or shoulder pain or neck pain, how they do their movements. So, is their technique sound? What is their first movement? Do poor positions get better, worse, or stay the same? I've seen some people that set up terribly, so a very poor starting position, but as soon as they go into the movement, they look perfect. So you can't always judge by the posture alone. Movement always tells a story. So what is their range of motion? Can they get through to the overhead position that they need? Can they fully extend their hips and their legs? Now the thing that's really key is what exhibits failed load transfer first. This is basically jargon to say what's the first region. Is it the shoulder, the elbow, the wrist, the back, the ribs, the hips? What's the first thing that you notice that does the wrong thing or doesn't move when it should move? That's what we call failed load transfer. So this is Talena Fortunato. This is obviously a GIF photo from a video, and you can see that she's doing overhead pistols on a BOSU, which if she wasn't a top 10 games competitor, I would not recommend that you do this. And even now you can see that her knee is not coping particularly well, and that's going to grind away at cartilage. She's fairly controlled until she has to come up. So the region that exhibits failed load transfer first for me would be her hip, because you see the internal rotation occur. It may be in her thorax. I'd like to have a proper video rather than a series of photos to see what happens. So the first region that moves or stays still in an undesired way is what load transfer is. Sometimes it is very subtle. I have to put my hands on to feel it. I do like using Coach's Eye or any video analysis tool to help my patients see it, because sometimes you don't even realize what you're doing. The number of people who think that they're doing a deep enough air squat when actually they're too high and they should go lower is phenomenal. So don't just talk behind somebody's back if they're not going through the movement standards. Take a video and they may not realize that they're doing it. Coaches often have better eyes than physios and other health professionals. If you've been in sports a long time and you're looking at how people move, you're practicing your eye skills. So if you're on my course and you have great eyes, I'm not surprised at all. Now, the principles of assessment and treatment is based on working out what the primary driver is. Once you've figured out that region that's failing load transfer first, what system is it from? So each of these components in this puzzle is a system. Now, you can have two or more reasons why a dysfunction is occurring. So it could be a muscle problem and a joint problem. It could be two different joints that have their own issues that are causing the problems. So they're called co-drivers. The integrated model system was proposed by Lee and Lee in 2007. Diane Lee and Linda Joy Lee, they're actually no relation at all. They're both Canadian physios, so you can look them up. It is a holistic model. It can apply to any region, so any musculoskeletal joint or region this applies to. I like the model personally because it's flexible to adapt to new research findings. So these are just subcategories, and within that you use the latest research findings as well as the clinical experience that you have to make that model work. So the first part of the puzzle is the person in the center of the puzzle here. And we want to know what your goals are. We want to know what your virtual body's like. Some people say, I've got this massive pain, and they outline it on their back and it's no bigger than a 20-cent piece. But to their brain, to them, it feels absolutely massive. So we want to know if there's any disparity in what's going on in your brain. We want to know your story and why things have meaning and significance, because those emotions can cause fear, which can affect your movement. I'm sure if you've ever fallen off a pull-up bar doing pull-ups, the next time you get on the pull-up bar, you're going to have that little bit of apprehension, and it may affect the way that you pull. They're the sorts of things that we're talking about. So, how do you affect your own body is what that first piece of the puzzle is. And I get that by listening to you, by giving you questions and listening to your answers. Now, the articular system is the joint system. This is your bones, your cartilage, your ligaments, your joint capsule. These sorts of things can all have problems. You can have a fractured bone, torn cartilage, torn ligaments, stretched capsules. We look to see how your joints are moving. Your myofascial system are your muscles, your fascia, so the coverings of the muscles, the tendons, all of these things combine for the myofascial system. It's the active pulling in your body. Your neural system is your central nervous system, so your brain and your spinal cord. Your peripheral nervous system, which is your nerves. It's also the receptors. It also includes motor control, which is the coordination of your whole system. Your visceral system It's going to be your internal organs and their tissues, because believe it or not, they play a big part in the tension that goes through your body. If you've ever had a hysterectomy, there's a lot of weight in the uterus that's now taken off the skeletal system. There are attachments and ligaments and a force that is generated by the physical presence of the uterus that can make a difference in how you're moving. If you've had any sort of operation, there's going to be scar tissue producing some of that force. So we want to look at your internal organs and what their tissues are doing. I also include in this piece of the puzzle any sort of medical conditions, blood vessels, lymphatic system. You know, if you have cancer, for example, or a tumour, that goes into the visceral system for me. It does fit into the puzzle, and it will be dealt with within that piece of the puzzle. The last piece of the puzzle is the strategies for performance and function, or in other words, how your technique and how you do what you do. You know, if I asked you to bend over and pick something up off the floor, I'm sure that if we got 3 different people to do it, they'll pick it up 3 different ways. It's how you do that that can determine whether or not you're making your pain better or worse. How many ways can you do the one same thing is a very important question to answer, because people who are in pain often only have one way to do something. And when you're stuck doing something the same way over and over, it really freaks the body out. It doesn't like it. It likes to have options. So those that are the healthiest have many different ways to do the one thing. So I want to know, is that one way exacerbating or relieving your problem? Because if the one way that you like to do bending over makes your pain feel better, then we call that an adaptive strategy, which means that you're adapting to the pain. If that one way makes your pain worse, and doing it a different way makes it better, and you continually choose to do it the way that makes it worse, we call that maladaptive. It's a strategy that's inefficient and is causing you pain. So once we've found the main region and the main system has been found, then things get a lot easier. We want to give specific treatment to address the restrictions that you have. We want to correct your posture. We want to teach you a correct coordination of your muscles and teach you the correct movement patterns. So in these treatment principles, we want to target specific regions. We want to use specific positions relevant to the problem movement, and we want to get specific results. So to do that, we use a test-retest system, which has been around for decades in the physiotherapy world. I don't care what you do to get something better. I don't care what you use to get someone better. Provided it's legal, it's all good with me. So, if we're going to rehab somebody, we want to do so specifically. So we want to get the mechanics right. We want to get the consistency right. So the mechanics is how you do it. The consistency is demonstrating that mechanically sound movement repeatedly over time. And the intensity is basically increasing the load, so the weight, increasing the speed, increasing the power output that you need. And that's from CrossFit HQ. So CrossFit teach on their level 1 course mechanics, consistency, intensity, and I think that's fantastic. CrossFit Football have a slightly different take, and this is much more in line with what I've been doing for nearly 2 decades. You want to basically help somebody move with what they have and improve how they move with what they have. You can then improve how far they can move, and once they've got more range of motion, how far they can move, you have to stabilize it. And once you've got that stabilized, you want to strengthen it. You want to bind it up with muscles and motor patterns that are going to be strong. That's going to lead to better power and speed, which you can then do over and over and over to increase the load, which will eventually lead to improved results, improved performance. So that's a hierarchy from CrossFit Football, and I quite like that too. So the key principle number one is be specific to the region that you want. You want to isolate that movement to the joint, muscle, nerve region that you want. Back pain, if you're setting up bent over, I want you starting with a straighter back and a neck in a better position so that everything looks better. Key principle number two is a specific position. Use positions that are similar to your problem movement. So for this client here, he had trouble pulling off the ground. I used an exercise to help him get into this position because it's very specific to his setup position on the bar. He probably could be a little bit further forward so that his shoulders are over his hands a little bit more. But the bottom line is that I'm using an exercise that is specific to his problem. I'm not giving him a posture exercise lying on his back because that's not where his problem was. Key principle number three is specific results. I want to test it after 30 seconds. It should be helping by now. If I gave this client the exercise and he took a photo before and it looked like this, and he took a photo afterwards and it still looked like this, I wouldn't even bother doing that exercise anymore because it's not going to make the changes that we need. The changes should be quick, within 30 seconds. So, how do we scale? So scaling is decreasing the load and movement requirements of a specific exercise in a CrossFit situation. So we want to scale within the limits of the correct technique and movement. If you have somebody who is a beginner or is coming back from injury, or even someone who doesn't have pain but has a performance problem, they can't increase their weights, they're inefficient, or it just looks bad, you want to back them off until they're at the correct technique. You want to give them mobility exercises and flexibility exercises. You want to teach them how to stabilize what they do have. And then you can start adding strength, power, speed, and Metcon training. And that's what a good coach and programming's for. You can do the Given Cold Steel program is at the gym that I train at. They've also got speed and barbell. You can follow the CrossFit Football program, the CrossFit HQ program. So long as they address these general physical skills, it doesn't matter what you do. I just want good coaching, good programming, and a mindset of mechanics, consistency, and intensity, because really that's what's going to prevent injury. So what is an increased risk of injury? You're going to get injured when you push your body systems to their end point. If you keep taxing the body will strain, and eventually you'll overcome the tissue strength and parameters that it can withstand, and you'll sustain an injury. So we decrease the injury risk by improving your technique and by limiting the shearing and compression forces. So Ev here is showing us a beautiful air squat. She has no load on her back. Everything's nicely in position. She's not likely to hurt herself like this if she does this over and over. Somebody else with a rounded back, a head poked forward, her knees in an internally rotated position is more likely to hurt themselves. We want to optimize your fitness and to decrease your risk of injury. So your fitness being those 10 attributes earlier. We prevent injuries. Well, can we prevent injuries? I don't think we can. I think we can only decrease the risk of injuries. So injury prevention is really risk management. It's decreasing the risk of injury. Sometimes things happen. Even sitting on your bum at a desk, you're more likely to die than if you get up every half an hour. The research is telling us all sorts of interesting things. Walking across the street is a risk. Getting in a car is riskier than catching a plane. So everything in life has a risk. CrossFit is no different. We just want to reduce the risk. So the Bulletproof Your Body series is a series of seminars that I run which address the shoulders and the arms, the back, so the lower back and the ribs, your hips, your ankles, the core and your pelvic floor. So these are the different types of subjects that are covered in this series. This is for everybody. You can be a beginner all the way to a games level athlete, and I will guarantee that you'll learn something from me on these seminars. You can be injured, or you could have no pain at all. So if you're injured, that's obviously what people are attracted to. They want to get their shoulders better, they're sick of their sore shoulders. But if you have no pain at all, I'm going to be able to show you ways to get even more awesome than you are now. The goal of these seminars is actually to give everybody a wow moment or an aha moment at some stage during the seminar. I want you to be able to go, wow, I didn't really think that such a small movement made such a big difference. Or, oh, I see, I can really feel that difference now that you put me in that position. That's why the seminars exist. I also want to challenge your beliefs about mobility, stability, flexibility, and strength. And I want to teach you how to take care of yourself and to teach you how your coach and your health professional is part of your team. Okay, I'm not a physiotherapist that wants to see you over and over and over. My job is to help you get to the point where you can take care of yourself, where you can strengthen yourself, and where I can liaise with your coach and your health professionals so that they can do what they need to help you continue to take care of yourself. I'm a big believer in personal responsibility. I can do things for you like massage you and crack your back and do all sorts of things that a health professional does. But ultimately, if you don't put the work in strengthening and controlling the movement that you have, you're going to continue to see me. I always tell people it's much more impressive to go to a party and say, yeah, I saw somebody only once or twice and my pain is gone, versus going up to a party saying, yep, I went and saw that health professional 3 times a week for 6 weeks and then twice a week for 3 months. And after 6 months and 50 sessions, I now feel better. That does not sound impressive to me at all. So I'm not interested in that sort of thing. I want to get you better in 1 to 3 sessions. Now, just an example of a course participant, Nicole turned up to a course. She was thrown in at the last minute by her manager, and she didn't really want to be there because she was busy. It's not that she didn't respect me, it's just that she didn't know me, she had no warning, it was just a bad situation. And she had hip pain. She couldn't squat or run anymore. It just got progressively worse over the 4 months. She'd seen other people, but nothing helped. So she thought, well, I've seen other people, what difference are you going to make? She came to the seminar skeptical because as a last minute replacement and not knowing anything, you don't think much is going to happen. So let's see what her squat looks like. 5 minutes later, we had it sorted. This is her squat before when she first came to us, and you can see that she's leaning over to the left hand side, and that's because she's got right hip pain in here. After less than 5 minutes and pushing on a certain spot, she can squat better. She leans over to the right more, so it's not perfectly straight, but it's a lot better. So I'm going to show you some video now. Okay, so what you saw there was that her first squat was that painful short squat. She then did her squat again, and she was able to go all the way down, and you saw that she overcorrected to the right just because her body didn't know what to do. It hadn't done it for 4 months. And when I asked her to do it evenly, you could see that she thought that she was even. So she didn't actually realize that she was moving off to the right like that. So on the seminar, I gave her some things to do, and 2.5 weeks later, this is what she looked like. Nice even squat. Nice deep even squat. She doesn't have to hold on to that rib anymore. She looks a lot better, a lot more comfortable, and that pain is significantly decreased, if not gone most of the time. So she learned on the seminar how to release the restrictions that she had in her ribs. We helped her with the posture. She controlled the problem rib. Now she had to do that with her hands to start with, but I also taught her how to do it with some thought cues. She ended up learning how to squat better and how to integrate it into different exercises so that she could strengthen the pattern in many different ways. So now she can run and squat again, and that was only one session with me. So there's the 3 pictures again. That's her squat before, that's her squat afterwards, and that's her squat after 2 weeks of retraining. So that's the type of thing that we can see. I ran a course yesterday, and again, a girl who had hip flexor tightness for more than 6 months, pain every night, had to take painkillers to get to sleep, and this girl's only 23. Again, one session, showed her where to press. Coincidentally, it happened to be a rib again. She had no more pain until she did something to flare it up. But again, the pain wasn't the same. She was able to get control of it and learn what she needed to do to fix it. So why come to the seminars? You want to come to the seminars because the magic happens in person. You can watch videos and learn to do it to yourself, and you may get that magical moment, and I really do hope and pray that that happens for you. But in person, with an experienced person helping you, is when the magic really happens. You can only learn so much from reading and from watching videos. All the little tidbits and the hints that you get on the seminar, those little things don't often get recorded or written down because they're off-the-cuff comments. So I've given away a significant amount of knowledge now just in this lecture, but I know only a few people who could implement what I've just gone through on their own. So all of this information is not new. There are people doing it around the world, but the specific application of it and making it work for you is very hard to find someone to do that. These guys here are the CrossFit Football staff, or 2 of them, Luke, and Luke is who I deal with mainly, and Ben as well. And they run a great seminar, CrossFit Football, and I've learnt a lot of things from them, and they've hopefully learnt a lot of things from me. But it's in the seminar where we learnt those things. They watched and learned from me being at their gym, and I watched and learned from them by working with other people. So when you come to the seminar, bring exercise clothes, shoes, and whatever you need to move well in, because these are active seminars. For the girls, shorts and crop tops are really helpful because we need to be able to see your back and your shoulders, because seeing through clothes is only for very experienced people. As soon as you expose the areas that we need to see, like the shoulders and the back, that just makes it a lot easier for everyone to learn. So be prepared for that. For the guys, shorts, and you'll probably be asked to remove your shirt for the same reason. If you want to wear a crop top, I won't judge you. Of course, no one is forced to do anything. If you want to wear a t-shirt and long pants, it's up to you. I don't force anybody to do anything. It's just for your own education and the education of the people on the course with you. I want you to bring your questions, because it's only through answering questions where you feel like you've got good value for money. There are no dumb questions. I will guarantee you that if you ask a question, somebody else is already thinking it. I want you to be prepared to be challenged though. I'm going to challenge your beliefs. I'm going to challenge your movement. I'm going to challenge how you do things. Now, if you're interested in hosting a seminar, I can do seminars from 1 to 16 hours, from a one-on-one to a big group. I have seminar staff that can help me do all that. Obviously, the longer the seminar, the more you're going to get out of it. I ran a 2-hour seminar yesterday, and that was very difficult because they wanted so much more and we had so little time. 4 hours is a nice length. I can do 8 hours. I'm doing some 8-hour seminars as well. You can contact me at antonylow@mypteducation.com if you're interested in hosting a seminar. So that's me. Thank you very much for listening. Well, that's me over here. If you have any questions, I'd love to hear from you. Just leave a comment below. Again, there are no silly questions. Find me on social media, and I hope to see you at a seminar soon. Thank you very much.